Amidst a genocide in Gaza, every avenue must be taken in order to isolate, damage, and disrupt Israel's war machine. Those are the words of activist Huda Ammori from the group Palestine Action, who's joining me today.
Thank you. It's always good to be here.
When we last spoke, Huda, you told me about your kind of family history and how your grandfather had been shot by a British soldier in Palestine when it was a British colony. And I think this is
Mhm.
something that more and more people are learning about, and they're being quite shocked by Britain's role in creating the genesis of this conflict, essentially. And a key figure in this, of course, was Arthur Balfour, who wrote the famous Balfour Declaration, which promised a Jewish home for the Jewish people in Palestine that was seen by the Zionist movement as carte blanche for a nation state. Can you tell us about the most recent action related to Arthur Balfour's legacy that took place a few days ago?
Yeah, so an activist in Palestine Action spray painted the Balfour painting and slashed it up, using a carving knife, I believe. The actual action in itself was literally stabbing at the root cause of the ongoing occupation of the Palestinian people. And I think through doing so has massively highlighted not just Balfour's, role, which was extremely significant to the creation of the Zionist entity and the displacement and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people, but also the ongoing role of Britain, which has been continued for over a century in the occupation of the Palestinian people and has made people reassess their role within this struggle. And also, sometimes it's easy to think, well, we're over here in Britain, they're over there in Palestine. We know it's wrong. We know it's a genocide, and maybe we can do something towards that. But actually, I think it's very important that people realize how crucial this country is, how crucial they were, and how crucial they are. They are today. And through hosting companies like Elbit Systems, through their diplomatic ties and their financial ties to the Zionist entity. And these are the things that we need to end. And their action, every Palestinian and many more know the name of Balfour. They know what their history is and the consequences the Balfour Declaration had to the Palestinian people still to this day. But not every British person understood the ramifications of what Balfour did while he was a foreign minister of this country. And I think now that's actually completely different. And I think most people do understand who Balfour is and what he did. And I think the fact that that action went viral does demonstrate that we can be more shocked by destruction of an artwork that most of us didn't even know existed than sometimes at the destruction of a museum or destruction of a university or the massacring of a whole family, let alone the 30,000 people who have been killed. So I think it's really brought out some of the moral inconsistencies that we have in our society.
You've had a string of successes in your campaign against Israel's largest arms dealer, Elbit Systems, in terms of shutting down not just sites involved in manufacturing drones in the UK, but the companies that support Elbit in doing that business. Can you give us an update on some of those successes?
Yeah, so in the past 3 or 4 months now, we've seen 4 different companies pull out of working with Elbit Systems. And each one has had to email us directly to Palestine Action to explain that they've ended ties with the company and that they will refrain from doing so in the future. And I think this in itself is quite significant, the way that these results are being announced, because a lot of times in the wider movement, there'll be boycott achievements, which are brilliant, but often the company will try and stray away from admitting it was due to pressure. But in the last few months, we've seen these companies forced to admit that it is down to the campaigning pressure by having to contact us directly.
And some of those firms that have pulled out, it's there's a company that transports some of the explosives used by Elbit, some of its weaponry. There's also the company that does its recruitment. Another one hosts its website, and also a property management firm. What sort of impact do you think that's going to have on Elbit's ability to operate in the UK?
All of this builds up, and in the end, it's building towards Elbit not being able to operate in this country and not being financially viable for them. Because at the end of the day, they are a business, and that business needs to be able to get the best value for their deals. they need to be able to open up their doors. So if at every single point Palestine Action is disrupting them, then it's just a matter of time before they have to leave this country for good.
Lots of people are horrified by what Israel is doing in Gaza and the involvement of these arms companies like Elbit Systems. Are you finding that a lot more people now are showing interest in the kind of activism that you do and wanting to take part in Palestine Action?
Yes, we've seen a massive rise in people joining Palestine Action. We've had, hundreds in the past month or so who want to take direct action against the Israeli weapons trades, because people have seen in such a short period of time how the mass protests, the politicians' responses to the mass protests, to the petitions, to the lobbying, and I've seen them just continue to enable this genocide. So I think people who may be slightly newer to the movement are quickly learning about just how complicit this country is in the genocide, and also how unwilling the political class and the establishment are in changing that status quo. And then so they do look towards taking steps like direct action, even if that means pulling their liberty on the line. Because at the end of the day, when you see what's happening in Gaza, we've got to do absolutely everything in our power to stop it. And the steps we take here, being arrested, facing court cases feels extremely small to the consequences of what's happening to the Palestinian people in Gaza. And, it's now Ramadan. We don't know how much longer this intense bombardment is going to last for, but even after the bombardment and this assault ends, the occupation will continue unless we do everything in our power to stop it. And I think this is an all or nothing moment where we have to throw everything we have into not just stopping this current genocide, but stopping the occupation as a whole, which will continue to perpetuate bombardments like we've seen since October 7th.
Michael Gove is looking at listing Palestine Action as an extremist organisation. What do you make of that?
The new definition, it feels like it's a smear campaign by the state against us, to be perfectly honest. And, they want to try and class us as extremists and other organizations for opposing genocide. And we're being told that by opposing genocide and taking direct action to stop it, by putting our liberty on the line to stop it, we could be classed as extremists. And that apparently that means to be an extremist will be to undermine British values. But I think it's very insulting to most people in this country to determine British values as enabling and supporting genocide. I'm in this country, that's not my values. I think it's completely convenient for the political class to try and say, right, these people who are opposing a genocide in Gaza, who are shutting down weapons factories like Elbit, who test weapons on Palestinians, these are the most extreme, barbaric and disgusting acts that is happening in today's world through the military-industrial complex, which our government is completely a part of. And, so if they want to try and label us as extremists for opposing that, I mean, it's not going to affect us, is the bottom line. It's not going to stop us. We've faced a lot of intimidation attempts. This is probably one of the more prolific ones, but we have faced, people have been gone to prison in Palestine Action. They've been arrested several times. They've been raided. We've had all sorts of things happen to us by the state. So we're not going to stop by any means because of this move. If anything, the more they try and repress us, the more that they will actually encourage more people to say, well, what is Palestine Action doing to be considered extremist by a government who's enabling a genocide? And let's look at that and let's join them.